Okay, folks, we're looking at Unit D now, and this unit is a combination of the nervous and endocrine system. And we're going to spend the next couple of weeks, if not 3 weeks, looking at the nervous system. We'll see how we make out. Okay, so today we're going to look at neurons. But before we do that, let's just have a quick overview. Homeostasis is one of the key concepts in biology, body and balance. Okay, there is a control center. Well, let's start with the stimulus. Stimulus produces a change. There's my body. We want to keep it in balance. The change is detected by a receptor. A control center then receives the sensation and then sends information through an efferent pathway to an effector, anything that is going to respond to the stimulus. Now, the control center could be, for example, your brain. And then we look at the nervous system, but it could be a gland. And if it's a gland, then we look at the endocrine system. The glands are slow. Endocrine system is slow. The nervous system is fast. Nervous system tends to be short-lived. Glands releasing hormones are slow and longer in duration. But at any rate, it works the same way. It's going to keep your body in balance. Okay, when there's an imbalance, it's detected by a receptor, sends it to a control center that causes a change. Sensory input, monitor both external and internal environments. There's an integration process in your brain, and then you've got a motor output. Okay, and the effector in this case is your muscle. The sensor is your photoreceptors in your eye. The control center is your brain. Organization of the nervous system. The central and peripheral. Central means central, there it is. It's a brain and spinal cord. Peripheral carries information between the organs, effectors, and the CNS. So it's all notice the brain and the spinal cord are not colored in. It's the green part. Peripheral is broken up into the somatic, communicates with sense organs and voluntary muscles, and that's broken up into the sensory and motor. Sensory going in, motor going to an effector like a muscle. Peripheral can also be broken into the autonomic nervous system. Communicates with internal organs and glands. A fight or flight response. I've made a mistake here. Fight or flight is sympathetic, and parasympathetic we call rest or digest. If you're not stressed, it's your parasympathetic. Okay, so somatic consists of nerves connected to the sensory receptors, and the skeletal muscles performs voluntary. So that's an arm of your peripheral nervous system. Autonomic, parasympathetic, rest and digest, sympathetic, fight and flight. Permits involuntary functioning of things like blood vessels, glands, internal organs. We're going to look at that later on. Okay, first bullet point, general structure and function of the neuron, myelin sheath. Tell me about the nerve. What is it? How does a nerve function? Different parts. And this is a big bullet. Two types of nerve cells. There's the glial cells, which support neurons, hold them in place, nourishment, defend against infection. Here's some glial cells. And there are neurons, which we tend to think of as our nerve cells. Here is a neuron, and we're going to look at the anatomy of a neuron in a moment. The most important glial cell I want you to know, the only one I want you to know, is these things right here, these Schwann cells right here. They're going to support the neuron. They encapsulate a neuron. So the Schwann cells. Neurons, this is on page 369 of your textbook, this diagram. 3 types of neurons. Sensory, A comes before E, so they're coming towards the central nervous system. Let's find a sensory neuron here. There's a receptor on your skin, and it's the sensory neuron is going to bring the impulse to interneurons of your spinal cord. Well, because they're in the spinal cord, this makes up your central nervous system. This is your peripheral nervous system. Interneurons link neurons to other neurons. They are your central nervous system and your spinal cord. So the interneuron is in your spinal cord. And motor neurons, efferent. So A is bringing the impulse to it. E is exiting and leaving the interneurons, the central nervous system, and sending an impulse to an effector like a muscle. So this is also part of the peripheral nervous system. Now take a good look at the difference between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. And we can compare them to an interneuron too. Interneurons have very short axons. Those are the long cables of the neuron. Okay, it's a very, very short axon here. So sensory and motor neurons have very long axons. Can you see another difference? Sensory neurons have the cell body along in the middle of the axon, whereas peripheral neurons that are motor neurons have the cell body located at one of the terminals, one of the ends. Describe using an example the organized neurons and the function of reflexes. The reflex arc. When you go to the doctor and the doctor taps your knee, he's checking your patellar reflex. Sometimes the doctor will shine a light in your eye and they are checking your eye reflex. Okay, not for blinking, but for the iris contracting. We'll look at that one a bit later on. Well, this is an automatic response. When I touch something prickly, I automatically pull my hand off because it hurts. I don't have to think about it. In other words, the impulse goes to my brain afterwards. So when we look at a reflex arc, we have a stimulus, number one, a receptor on my finger, a sensory neuron, afferent. There is the tiny little cell body of it. It goes to an interneuron, which is a relay center in the spinal cord that sends the impulse down a motor neuron to an effector, my muscle, and to get a response. Okay, this is automatic. We don't think about it. Only after this loop has occurred do we detect it in our brain as pain. But that happens after, a millisecond after. It's on page 370 of your textbook. Okay, I want you to look at these videos. They're absolutely fantastic. You really enjoy watching these videos. They're pretty cool.